it, just didn't want to leave the 1,000. I think it would have been on the table, and I almost did it, but didn't quite pull the trigger, and that cost me potentially winning the 333 because everybody else, I had the knocks everywhere, I had the right stuff. Hopefully, we'll get to the right stuff today. By the way, I did. I think it was 20 something in the Wildcat. It was with a lineup that I posted from an early build. So hopefully some of you guys are checking that out. We've got Evan Meyer. Evan he's our site do everything. He's our guy, and he's helping us build the optimizer as well. And he hasn't played much DFS, so we're going to be trying to help him out. And you guys can use. He's going to ask some questions that maybe are a little bit more for beginners than what you guys are used to. But it's going to be good. It'll sort of balance it out, I think. We have no sheets today, but we do have our man Rody. So that means it's time to make money. For some reason, Rody, when we've missed sheets, we've actually had some pretty big Sundays, huh?
Yeah, maybe that's what it is.
I don't think that's the reason. I'm just saying he always jokes with me about it, so I always have to push one back at him. Evan, good to see you today. Glad to have you aboard. How you doing out there?
Good to be here. I know you guys celebrated Eric's birthday last week. Tomorrow's my birthday, so we're gonna make this a big winning day for me.
All right, a nice little birthday luck narrative. I love it. All
right. Either that or I just turn into a degenerate like everyone else.
Well, you know what? We can still be degenerates and still make money. It's just because you're winning doesn't mean that we're not degenerates. All right, let's get into it. Let's talk a little bit through this slate. Rody, I'm going to sort of ask you what games you're targeting the most. They're all, I see merit in all of them. And Evan, feel free to pop in after Rody goes on this. But Rody, what do you find as your main stacks? And we'll get into position by position.
The Dallas stack's popping a lot. They're pretty high owned. I do like the KC stack a little bit more. I feel like yesterday I felt like I should have went with Josh Allen, but I was more on the Burrow stack, and I haven't been going to these explosive ceiling quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. And I really think the ceiling quarterback today is going to be like Mahomes. He's pretty high owned, but it's warranted. Him and Dak are the highest owned guys. I do like to get different in some of the Millie lineups, like a Jalen Hurts type build at 6'1". Devontae Smith is pretty chalky today. You got Dallas Goedert. He's really chalky at tight end, but I still like that combination of a play. Those are some of the teams I'm stacking. I do like, basically it's a small slate, right? There's not much in there, but I think more plays for me will be more beneficial than my stacks. I kind of play a little bit of everything in some of the games I like, and then we'll go from there with some of the big plays, low-owned guys.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Look, we had a 2-game slate yesterday, and we had I think the highest scoring player in the slate was Kendrick Bourne, right? And he was 7% owned, I believe. So, hey, maybe we can get it again. And if you do play the Dak or Mahomes stacks, there's at least plenty of ways you can get different with it. By whether using Pringle, Hardman, and Wilson would be the three main ways to get different with those stacks. And I think all of those guys are viable. Wilson especially would be my favorite of that bunch, but I think they're all viable, especially the way Mahomes plays. So I don't mind that at all. I also do have Mahomes as my primary quarterback, but I have a ton of Dak as well. I'm basically using Dak, Mahomes, and I do have 15% Hurts and 10% Brady. That's where I'm at right now. Evan, what do you sort of think about today? You don't play as much DFS as a smaller slate. What are your do you have any thoughts or questions leading into this?
No, it's interesting because I'm looking at the lineups here, and specifically in the if I want to put an entry into the fantasy football millionaire on DK today, and I'm not necessarily going to build a stack, but I was running the optimizer that we created, and the one name I haven't heard from you guys is Garoppolo, and I'm wondering, what's your thoughts on, because he keeps coming up, and yet he's not owned particularly high, his 18th year in this particular one. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on him?
I threw in a Garoppolo. I actually prefer Roethlisberger to Garoppolo, to be honest with you. Garoppolo is definitely my least favorite quarterback on the slate. But I think there's some viability towards it just in the savings. The problem is this his ceiling for this year has been 21 fantasy points in the game. And I just think that you're going to get, somewhere between 25 to 30 plus from everybody else. And that's a ceiling game for him. I think a lot of the times here they're going to try and run the ball. They probably won't have a great success. Dallas's run defense has been pretty good, but they're going to try to run the ball first. If they get down, that's when Garoppolo could come into use, which is certainly a possibility. I just don't have as much interest in him. He's definitely my least favorite quarterback. But like I said, I did want to get one stack in, maybe two with Garoppolo in there, just because there is some way that Dallas jumps out to a 2-touchdown lead, and next thing you know, Garoppolo does have the 20+ fantasy points, and maybe nobody else does score more than 25. And in that case, with the savings, he would be viable. And I like the reason I don't like Roethlisberger so much. I more like the pass catchers for Pittsburgh because they throw it all the time, and it's the opposite of San Francisco. San Francisco wants to run the ball as much as possible. Pittsburgh throws the ball, but they don't really throw it downfield ever. So the touchdown scoring is worrisome for Pittsburgh. But at the same time, you're going to get a ton of points from at least one of those receivers, maybe two. Rody, what do you think about that, about Garoppolo? And then take us into maybe Garoppolo versus Ben as low-owned plays.
Yeah, like I was kind of mentioning about stacks. I think maybe like a lot of people play a little bit of every one of the games, obviously, and you can stack all of them up. Garoppolo does great out well for his price. So that's why he's kind of popping a little bit more in the optimizers, I think, because he's grading out like a decent like value per dollar for points. But his ceiling's relatively lower than like a Mahomes or a Dak or a Jalen Hurts with the rushing upside. So you got to factor that in as well. But I like Ben and Garoppolo at those prices just because you can kind of fit in some other pieces. And I do like Kittle today. Kittle's coming in a little bit lower owned as much as like Goddard, Travis Kelce. I mean, he's the third guy, right? But I mean, Kittle's played well with Garoppolo throwing him the ball. So, I mean, that's a decent stack. And you got a couple of receivers that could go off too. Brandon Ayuk's kind of been playing a little bit better. He's probably not going to see ownership as much as like you would like Debo or something like that. So you can kind of stack it up a little decent way.
Yeah. Evan, did that answer like some of your thoughts?
Yeah, no, that's helpful. No, it's because it's interesting when I look at what Sheets put in here for his fantasy points on this. He's got him up pretty high, and I wasn't sure what if that was appropriate.
It's the price thing, is my guess, and also that game does have the highest total, so I get it. But it's just a Garoppolo specific thing that he doesn't have the same ceiling as these guys do, even though, again, it's a 3-game slate. Maybe the ceiling is not what you need. And if KC beats the hell out of Pittsburgh, they'll still probably keep throwing the ball. That's the only problem. But if Dallas is up big, you could see Zeke take over. And I'm going to use this to transition over to running backs. And a lot of Sheets' projections are going to be better for cash games than they will be for tournaments. Not that I think Garoppolo should be your cash game quarterback, but there is an argument with the price savings if we didn't have value in these other positions, but now we do have value that I think is worth talking about. So this is the most interesting. Well, not the most interesting. It's one of the most interesting things of the day is the running back spot. I'll just quickly say, like, I will be really heavy, and I'll eat some of the chalk on Daryl Williams. I'm very nervous about the Keyshawn Vaughn play. I think there's a good chance they use Bell a decent amount. I think there's a reasonable chance that Gio gets plenty of work coming out of the backfield should Philly be playing with the lead, or even just on third down opportunities. If Gio's going well, Brady will throw the ball 60, 70 times. Not really, but you know what I mean, 35, 45 times. If they're not moving the ball with the running game. The problem is Philadelphia's run defense is definitely a weak spot for them. Whereas Tampa Bay's pass defense is their biggest problem, and unfortunately, we have a running quarterback on Philly and we have a passing quarterback on Tampa. So I'd like to take advantage of the running backs, but I also do feel like this could be a little bit trappy. I still do have some Vaughn because of how cheap he is, especially like the savings on FanDuel and on DraftKings. He's just so cheap. But Rody, what are you getting to in terms of running backs? Because I feel like those are like where you start your first conversation because they're cheap, they're spend downs, and then I think people are going to play a lot less Zeke. I don't think many people are going to play Pollard, and I don't think that many people are going to play Miles Sanders. But where do you stand with all these guys, Rody?
Yeah, I usually tend to go with those same like you did. I usually don't go crazy off the board with the running back, so I don't mind getting a little Zeke at a little bit lower ownership, or maybe Miles Sanders in there as well. If you're looking at stacking up some Tampa or like Mike Evans and Sanders combo correlation or something from that game, then you'll want to kind of do something like that. I like the Keyshawn Vaughn as well in that same game's coming in cheap. He's getting some ownership though, so maybe go to like the Gio and Le'Veon aren't getting as much ownership. You can take a shot at one of those guys in the Millie Maker. I definitely don't mind that. Daryl Williams grades out as the best guy based on price per dollar for the usage, but he's also going to be the highest owned player for that same thing. So you can even get crazy. I mean, we've seen other running backs Casey's been using too. You know, Derek Gore and Jerick McKinnon both been getting some work. I mean, that's a crazy Millie shot right there. But I mean, three games. You know, Jerick McKinnon catches another touchdown from Mahomes. He's in this. He could be the guy over Daryl.
But wasn't that because Daryl Williams got hurt though?
You kind of, but I just been seeing a lot of these second running backs this year have been just like what do they call that? Where they like trolling the main guy, like that gets the goal line 1 yard carry or gets like the 10-yard run from the 10-yard on a dump pass and screen thing that's in there, So we've seen a lot of the good running backs lose a lot of points to their second guys this year, and on a 3-game slate, it's worth taking a shot at some of these guys if you're just looking for like a low owned guy in your stack. Maybe he's the only guy you play in the stack at 1% owned or something. And that's enough to get different. And everyone else is like good plays and 30 to 40% guys. And you got a Jerick McKinnon there, too. So,
yeah, I like the thought process. I don't know that I'm going to do it. I do think there's a lot of question marks with these running backs, but I would expect at least 2 or 3 to have, I don't think it'll be like, I don't think we'll have like everybody at 10 points or lower. So elsewhere, that's the only thing. I think you're going to get a 20+ game from whether it be Najee.
I like Najee. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Najee and Eli Mitchell and Najee with the dump offs. Everybody keeps saying, well, Pittsburgh's not going to score enough. And on FanDuel, sure, don't play Najee then. But on DraftKings, there's going to be a lot of work through the passing game for these guys, pretty much regardless of game script or anything. But not to mention the game script suits a guy like Najee perfectly. He's just a little higher owned than I would like because I feel like people feel more certain of his role. But it does seem a little odd to me that people don't think that they're – I mean, look, we've seen this. We've had this all year long with Zeke and Pollard. They both are going to get some work. But I would forget about Zeke's last, sort of dud-ish game and just go ahead and play him. That's where I'm at. What do you think about this stuff? What did you come across at running back in the optimizer and that stuff, Evan?
Yeah, I mean – I guess what I keep thinking about is, in the playoffs, whether teams know obviously who their opponents are going to be handing it to or throwing it to, and they're trying to kind of spread it out a little bit more. There'll be surprises. And when you look at the ownership on Najee and Elliott and Mitchell, it's like, wow, maybe I should pick someone else because they're going to be covering these guys. They're going to be focusing their defenses on these guys, and the way maybe they're going to win the game is with the unexpected player or the one that just has a great game. So, yeah.
Well, who will be trolling me major, and I do have him in my secondary lineups, but is going to be if Miles Sanders has a big day, I'm going to be very upset because I've done very well by avoiding for years running backs against Tampa Bay. And Miles Sanders, in what could end up literally being like a 4-man rotation for running backs, is a guy who I'm sort of keep finding myself tempted to go for it. Rody, I shouldn't do that, right? I shouldn't do that. Talk me out of it, Rody. I don't want.
You're tempted to not play him, or tempted to play him because?
No, I'm not playing him, but I keep finding myself tempted to go. Okay, maybe I can play him at 5K. I mean, think about it. Look, it's a better situation for Vaughn. There's similar skepticism about how much work these guys are going to get. But if he really is your number one running back, don't you think in the playoffs you're going to get the best effort from him? You're going to get you're going to get the best, most usage from him because you have those guys at very similar prices. I mean, he's almost 4,500 versus 5K. It's an interesting thought, and he's going to be low owned because we've seen how volatile that backfield is. But if he gets the upside on his way and he gets the 2 touchdowns, it just doesn't seem. I mean, he had 1 touchdown all year long. It's wrong. Please tell me not to do it.
I hate giving you that advice, but I mean, yeah, just stick with what you're thinking.
Okay. What are you doing with Sanders? Anything? A little bit? I know you're mixing it a little bit.
I don't know. I probably stick to my top guys. I usually pick a few of these guys and load up on them heavy. Like I might be Elliott heavy, Najee heavy, Daryl Williams heavy.
Same.
And sprinkle a couple of those other guys in that are lower owned. Might have a Sanders. I'm less on Mitchell today, I think, than any of them. So
I know Mitchell's got a tough matchup, and Dallas can use other guys to run. San Francisco can use other guys to run the ball, but I do think San Francisco's going to try to win the game with their running game, and I think that's enough of a reason to just have me a little bit higher on him. And with Najee,
yeah, but you got Debo there too, been getting runs.
Of course,
Debo,
no, I know, and Kittle will occasionally.
They're utilizing a lot of other rushing.
And Garoppolo he'll run a few times a game. Like, I get you. I hear you loud and clear. It's not a beautiful running back slate, which has me leaning wide receiver and tight end primarily in my utility spot. I like double tight end stacks today. There's a lot of good tight ends out there, and it's a really good way to go. Let's talk about wide receivers before we jump into tight ends, because there's a lot of good stuff to spend up for, and all the cheap guys come with question marks. I mean, even a guy like Tyler Johnson, it could just as easily be Perriman as Tyler Johnson today. Brandon Ayuk is going to be completely unowned. There's an unowned one, or a very low owned one for you. But the one I want to start with you with, Rhodey, and then we'll jump over to Evan. What are we doing with Juju here?
I was hoping to ask you, Bobby.
Okay, well, I'll tell you my thoughts on it. I will probably be a little conservative and just sort of go a little with the field. I probably will end up with about 15% Juju. I just think that the number of times, I mean, look, even if they're all tiny. What did Roethlisberger threw the ball at that one day? He threw it 50 times. I think he threw for 180 yards, but he had two receivers over 20 fantasy points. That's that you could see that, like, there's a path to like a 7-catch, 60-yard game out of him. Maybe you get a touchdown, but mostly that 13 points at 3K is worthwhile. And I think there's touchdown upside for everybody. That sounds silly to say, but I don't know. I'm just sort of a little stuck on that. And do we really need that value? Because are we better off maybe taking a shot on Cedric Wilson, who's proven that? I mean, we know the third receiver for Dallas has had how many games over 20 this year? Something like 8. It's a high number, whatever. It's been basically half the game. So maybe that's a better idea, or Tyler Johnson or Perriman. And I don't know if I need it. So I'm probably going to, I have five 333s on DraftKings today. I'll probably play him in one. That's where I'm at currently. How about you over there, Evan? I'm guessing that is Juju showing up on the optimizer, Ms. Schuster?
No, well, not on the one run that I did there, but yeah, this has me second guessing myself all the time in terms of who I think, or what I think is going to be a high scoring game, and this one's hard.
It's tough. I just would say that I would encourage everybody to try to play some Pittsburgh receivers, because forget the point total for the team. These guys are going to throw the ball a lot.
Yeah, so I took Vaughns.
Mm-hmm. You took who?
Now, am I gonna? I've been trying to save a little money and with your suggestions, and now I'm thinking, all right, maybe I bring in someone big. Maybe I bring in CD. I don't know.
Yeah, it's here. So let me just take this a little further. Like, the Pittsburgh receivers are going to be the lowest owned. Like, I mean, I have Claypool projected at 15%. I think he'll be higher than that. I have Johnson projected at 13%. I think he'll be higher than that. Juju projected at 12%. That's too low. I'm sorry. Like, these guys are going to get work. Rhodey, where do you stand on the receivers?
The Dallas guys are popping a lot. Like, you talking Cedric Wilson. He's been really good. I do like that. He's popping pretty good. I like Deontay Johnson. He just gets a lot of balls for DraftKings PPR, 13%. I really do think you're right. We need to play some of these Steelers receivers. I don't even mind Juju, or even pairing them together in that stack and hoping, like you said, 2 receivers for Steelers go over, 20 points, and they're 2 you need, and then Ben's still not there, but you got Mahomes on the other side that threw 4 touchdown passes.
Right, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. So you take, that's why I like Mahomes with 2 Pittsburgh receivers. Like, you don't, just because this is a big mistake a lot of people make in DFS, and we talk about correlation and it matters in general. But when you have a team specifically that throws little 5-yard passes like 40 times a game, and on a PPR site, you should be taking advantage of that. It doesn't matter if you have the quarterback with those receivers, right, Rhodey? In Pittsburgh's case. Like, you don't need to play Ben if you wanted to play 2 receivers from Pittsburgh.
Oh, heck no, especially not on this game. Yesterday, you would have won. You could have won big money with Tyler Boyd and Chase, playing Josh Allen, and then just not even having Burrow with the 2 receivers. Yep. So, so that, Definitely in these smaller slates, guys, I'm playing 2 receivers with no quarterback. That's for sure.
Yep. I mean, on that note, I really do like also the Jalen. Like, this is what so in my big build, I initially, it's easy to play like Devontae Smith and Goddard, who are both going to be popular, and I like it for their prices a lot. I don't think you should be playing. I think as much as possible, I would try to single stack Jalen Hurts today. That would be my way of going about it. I think it's okay to do the double stack with him. But why not play 2 Steelers receivers instead? Maybe 2 in your Hurts stacks. 2 guys from KC. Maybe even you could play Kelsey and Hill if you want to. You can actually afford to. And then maybe play one of the Pittsburgh guys instead of double pairing this Jalen Hurts situation. What do you think about that, Rody? And then we'll talk about it, Tevin, a little bit about builds.
Yeah, I mean, I like everything you just said. I mean, that's fine. That's perfectly. You can do that. That's fine.
Yeah. Evan, so what are you coming across with the other receivers that you were struggling with? You said the thing about CD before, that that he pops well. I personally am a little bit on Cooper's side on DraftKings, CD side on FanDuel, but I do like both of them quite a bit. What are you coming across though in the optimizer, and then what thoughts do you have?
Yeah, I mean, I ended up the Tyreek Hill. I feel like I have saved up enough money. I can slip him in there, and I'm hoping that he's going to get a lot of work today. I don't know. I haven't put in too much on him, but I think that's how they're going to win the game with him, I think.
Yeah, I love Tyreek today. He's my favorite spend up, but I do think that Debo being slightly lower owned is kind of appealing, even though the matchup is tough, they say. But if you look at actually like what's crazy about a guy like Quandre Diggs, like you have Diggs, who's he leads the NFL in interceptions and everything. He's also given up the most yards in one-on-one coverage of any player in football this year. So I actually think that there is an argument to maybe make for Debo. As a not low owned, but certainly lower owned. Rody, where do you stand with the receivers? How do you rank the Cowboys? What do you think of any San Francisco receivers? Talk a little bit about that.
CD grades out pretty good for his price. One of the better receivers on the slate. He did bust me there that last few games. That one game would hurt me a little bit. I was mad at him, but I think I'm gonna have to go back to him. He hasn't had last 4 games. He hasn't really had anything. He hasn't had any big games earlier in the season, so like, but his price is down, so it's 6.3. He grades out pretty decent. I definitely like him. I like Debo's expensive at 7.9, but he gets some rushing work, guys. He's half the ownership of CD, so definitely don't mind going there. I do like Brandon Ayuk as well, lower ownership, about 7% in that same game, especially if you're stacking that game. You can stack it up with those guys, and I'm fine with that. Any combination of that too. So.
Yep. Guys, pop in your questions. We're going to talk about tight ends real quick, and then we're going to just sort of give it final thoughts. But pop in any questions before we get out of here. Oh, I'm sorry about that, K9 Bronco. I didn't see the question about favorite stacks on FanDuel. That's a good question, because I actually think on FanDuel you can make an argument that Hurts is the best tournament play, right? Like I always want the rushing upside on FanDuel. The problem is you get the touchdown thing. I'm worried about Philly in general. I don't necessarily think they're an awesome team, but the way that Tampa's looked recently, maybe this could be a big spot for him. So I'm sort of struggling between whether I want to go in my main lineup on FanDuel, Mahomes or Hurts over there, or Dak even. All 3 of those are my 3 considerations. But I do like the idea initially of going with Hurts. What do you think about I'm sorry, I didn't get into all the tight end stuff. I don't know why I just jumped over to that. But I do think that like tight end is the most interesting position of all in a way, because you have the best tight ends in football playing today. So, and Gronk in the postseason at sub 15% ownership with Brady against a team that gets crushed over the middle, it feels like a good spot. But you also are going to have some Cameron Brate looks, and one other guy who I'll have at least 15% of, who's going to be 4% owned as of right now that I'm looking at, is Dalton Schultz as a pivot off of some of these other chalky guys. Who are you looking? Who is the highest owned guys for you, and how do you sort of rank the Kelsey, Gronk, Kittle guys, and who else are you looking at, Rody?
I mean, Kittle grades out pretty good at 5.8 for DK. Schultz is right there. Schultz is grading out really well, guys, for a play today, and he's lower. He's really low owned. I don't know. Do you think that's going to be right?
It could be only because of the strength of the other guys, but I don't think it'll be quite that low, is my guess. Just because people like Dak, you know what I mean?
Well, they did talk about, how much Jarwin going to get too. Like he's back in the mix, and I felt like earlier in the year Jarwin was catching balls, and then all of a sudden it switched over to Schultz, and then Jarwin got hurt. Schultz was taking all the work, so I don't know. I think Schultz has been getting a lot of balls though. One game, last couple games he had 10 targets and 9, 8 before that. The last one was 3. He had 3 targets last week, 3 catches, and 17 fantasy points. He's been getting a lot of points, guys. I don't mind Schultz. I'm gonna have to get him in there, I think.
Schultz could be our what's his name, our Knox play of the day. My favorite tight end from yesterday, which was beautiful.
Yeah, I had Knox 11%. He was in quite a few of my lineups. 11% in the Wildcat.
11% on a 2-game slate.
Yeah, I was sitting top 20 for a while in that game, and then Josh Allen decided to go bonkers. If he would have slowed down a little bit, maybe I could have stayed up there, but
I was the opposite. I looked like I was doing nothing, but I had all the nuts from the other game, so I really thought I could nail it. I just the Harris thing got me. It's just painful still. 200K decision right there. Evan, any final thoughts, sort of on sort of either questions or thoughts on how?
No, I was thinking about Gronk myself, but maybe because he got his $1 million in the last game, he's not going to play as hard. I don't know. I think the guy's banged up, even though I love him, and I'm worried that in the playoffs he either has a big game or he doesn't have any game. And having been a Pats fan for years, and I want him to have a good game. I don't think he's going to see any action today, so I'm not quite sure he's worth what they want. What's that?
Yeah, you should skip him then. I feel.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Schultz. I'm going to take your advice on Schultz and put him in.
I think Schultz is a really interesting one, especially if you're going to double tight end with Schultz. You're going to run into very, very, very few little competition. Just because I don't think that people are going to do that at all. If they're playing Schultz, they will play Schultz probably in a Dallas stack alone. But I think playing Schultz with 2 tight ends is a really good way to go today. All right. Final thoughts. So I guess I'll reiterate my things because we're not getting many questions in. I'm going to be mostly my highest owned quarterback will be Mahomes, followed by Dak, followed by Hurts. On FanDuel, it'll be Hurts then Mahomes, then Dak as of right now for me. I do like Ayuk and Schultz as low owned plays. I like all the Pittsburgh receivers as lower owned plays. I like Zeke as a play that I think is too low owned, but actually still not that low owned. I will be overweight on Williams. I will probably be slightly underweight on Keyshawn Vaughn, but I will still have exposure. I will be very, very high on this. The main thing I'm going to do, though, is just make sure probably to have a Pittsburgh receiver in almost all my lineups. Rody, any final takes before we get out of here?
Are we talking D?
What?
What's that?
Are we going to talk defense or?
Oh, we can talk defense. Yeah, we'll do that in a minute after.
Yeah, I mean, final thoughts wise, I like a lot of the games. I'm gonna be heavy Mahomes. I think the Pittsburgh receivers or run backs are good in that game. You can play a little Gronk. He does show up in the playoffs a lot. I mean, I feel like not talking about Gronk. I feel bad if I didn't tell people to play him. But I do like Dalton. I do like Kittle. I do like Kelsey. I like Goddard a lot better than Rob Gronk. But, man, I feel like Gronk's the guy. They don't have many weapons over there. The guy could eat for 2 touchdowns. Brady and him been throwing passes for a long time. So if you're playing like 10 or 15 lineups, sprinkle some Gronk in there. But don't go too crazy because I think the other guys are a lot better. So,
yeah, I hear you. All right. What was that? So, Evan, for defenses, I really don't feel like there's any defense I won't play except for probably Pittsburgh. But I think that everybody else is viable, and I have it ranked Chiefs, Bucks. Then you get into then I would go Cowboys, Niners, but I think the Chiefs and Bucks are significantly ahead of everybody else for me. Obviously, that's going to be chalky, but I don't mind being chalky.
It's interesting because the Eagles are ranked first.
Yeah. No, I mean, I like some of the Eagles. I mean, we have seen if you can get some pressure on Brady, we have seen him throw a few pick sixes this year, and if you get all you need is one, And Brady.
Our optimizer came up with Chiefs, so maybe that's just the safe purchase. All right.
I think Chiefs and Tampa Bay are the safest by far, and that's usually I want upside for my defenses, but it's a 3-game slate. and I'm going to play the defenses that are when there's not really much of a price gap that are it just makes sense. And also, it's going to be a little bit spread out. You're going to have enough ownership, probably close to 20 on the Cowboys and 49ers, and probably 30-ish on the Chiefs and Bucks. I don't think the Eagles will be 10% even. I don't think the Steelers will be 5%. So something like that, I think, would be how it shakes out. Glad you're enjoying the Chop Up, Sensei Jay. Good to see you all in here. And I think we're going to get out of here. Eric's coming in late with the question that I was addressing. I do like the double tight end builds today quite a bit, and I think Rhodey likes them too. Do you like that, Rhodey?
Oh yeah, I like double tight end. Yep.
Yeah. And Evan, thanks so much for being with us. I'm going to go finish building my lineups. Rhodey, I think we're pretty much done. There's no more hot takes before we get out of here.
I don't know. It's a tough 3-gamer. There's a lot of good options out there, guys. Just good luck, and let's get it today.
Let's get it. And I can guarantee, and I'm going to say pretty sure that Rhodey will be popping off in Discord at some point today. We want you guys to as well. Rhodey will say he's got it won. I'll joke with him back. And then next thing you know, one of us is going to take down, hopefully, 6 figures plus today. And somebody Evan gets to 7 figures.
Sheets is taking me out for a drink on Tuesday for my birthday, so we'll laugh about the $1 million I want.
Sounds good to me, buddy. All right. Good luck to everybody. Thanks all for being with us, and we will see you guys hopefully at the top of leaderboards. Take it easy, y'all.